All right, so we're gonna run through a quick roll call and then we can start the presentation for this evening. So I believe we've got Miles Brown on the phone.
Yep.
All right, Dean Burho. Dean Burho.
You're muted, Dean.
All right, there we go.
All right, you're here. Thank you. Sheldon Crosby.
Yes, I am here.
Thank you. Tim Eagles,
Here.
obviously. Jack Kemper.
I'm here.
Thank you. Tim LaBouthier.
Yeah, I'm here.
Dave Quisenberry.
I'm here.
Bob Sanford.
I'm here.
And Peter Van Beckham. Oh, he's just calling in. I just saw him show up.
I can see him.
Yeah, I can see him on my, oh, he just disappeared from my list.
Peter, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
I see myself on a little box.
all right,
You
perfect.
as well. You're looking fabulous tonight.
Well, I feel great. And you know, when you feel good, you look good. So.
There you go.
All right. With that, I believe we have the full design team on, and Phil, are you gonna take the lead with the presentation?
Yes. Are you going to say anything, Shannon, about this process we're going through with the master plan as opposed to site plan special permit, or?
Well, I had done that in the email introduction to the committee when I sent this through to them. So, and I did share the midpoint development regulations with the committee.
Good.
So yes, this is a two-step process. So the first process is to do the zone change, approve the master plan, and receive the special permit for the uses that are being proposed for this project. So this is step one, and there's an opportunity with ADRC to review this at this particular point in time. And then there is a second step that will come, assuming we're successful with this first phase of the review process with TPZ. Then there is a second step where they come back for site plan review with more detailed drawings. So even now, our site drawings are at a master plan level. We have conceptual grading, conceptual utilities. So that's the level we're at, is really a master plan level. If the master plan's approved, then they'll come back with the site plan application. So.
Good. Good.
Okay, so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Phil, to lead the presentation. I've got the screen up that everyone can see, and can advance it at your request.
Great. Thanks, Shannon. I'm Phil Doyle. I'm a land planner from Simsbury, and we have been working on this project for probably going on 3 years now. With us tonight in my office, I have the architects, Todd and Ashley Clark from Blue Moon, and I also have one of the property owners and partners, Scott, and I think separately online, Abe Coyote and Barbara Duffy of Coyote Real Estate Development are on a separate line. And Robin Pearson, in case there are any legal questions, Robin Pearson, our attorney, is also online. You guys have probably gone online and seen the plans and probably the application paperwork as well, if made that available. And you're all professionals. You've gone through this before, so you, I think, have a great idea of where we are. Robin, why don't you flip to the next slide? I'll go through these quickly. The property we're looking at is about 24.5 acres of land. It's the part that's highlighted in that yellowy tan color. This area is part of a larger area, all outlined in red. That is part of the Midpoint District that was studied in the POCD, the 2018 update of the POCD. And that update, part of that update section is inserted in the left-hand side of this, this picture. And the POCD looked at the different properties in here. The waterside property is in here. The Mizzy land that is called Plant 17 is right where Robin has her, Robin Shannon has her cursor. And then our site is up to the left. And the POCD was looking for suggesting specific things in these three different zones. And in the zone that we are in, it was section 9.1 of the POCD update. They were looking to do something to develop a mixed use complex here. I think for 2 or 3 reasons. Robin, why don't we go on to the next slide and you might be front, go through it. This is the specific layout of the site. Farmington Avenue, Route 4 is to the north. We've got about 1,200 feet or so of frontage on Farmington Avenue, and the parcels that are involved in the zone change start on the left with the McCallum building and those industrial buildings that we've all seen over a long period of time as we've driven along the road. And that's what we call Parcel A. Parcel B is up on the road. It's a small residential piece that is been purchased by Jeff and is part of the complex. And then there are 2 larger pieces that are parcels C and D, exactly where Shannon rather, saying Robin because we've got Robin Pearson online.
It's okay. I got it.
Yeah. I don't mean to you to change your personality or anything. But the 2 larger pieces are each over 10 acres, and their history has been earth extraction. Back a number of years ago, I know when I moved to the area years ago, there was still earth extraction going on in this area, and the riverbank has been extended back quite some distance, particularly where you see that note Farmington River, the label. So we have undeveloped pieces of property. The undeveloped but for, if you look at that plan and you see some darker lines running across the middle of the site, those are the town sewer lines. The main trunk line that comes down from Unionville runs through the site. And you guys can see that it breaks the site up into smaller segments. There's also a sewer line that extends up to right through there that extends to feed the apartment complex that's on the opposite side of the street. So let's scoot on to the next slide. The McCallum building, I guess it's was called the McCallum building because in the 40s, an auto parts company bought it. It had been, I guess, built by a fellow named Winchell Smith, who built this as a grain factory in about 1924. It's a solid concrete building, really solid. It's got, I'm not exactly sure what you would call them, but they have these very, very big concrete columns with like mushroom cap tops that seem to support the floor up above. It is hard, as I understand it from our architect, who can tell us later. It's hard to work with. I think on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor of that building, the headroom might only be something in the 8-foot range. And there's a warehouse, tin warehouse that was built in the 50s. And then there's a block addition that was built in the 80s to this building. The building's always been underutilized. And the idea for all of this came out of the POCD, but it really started with town planning staff. Before it got as far as the POCD, people were looking to try to do something to upgrade this area, and the most recent change has been the hot dog stand, and that has been very well received. That's probably the best looking and the only really active building on the property. In the back of the building, it's interesting, there's a old railroad trestle that it connects to the bike path, the Farmington Heritage Canal Trail. And there's a grain hopper that's underneath that. They used to bring the rail cars in and dump the grain into hoppers. It's an interesting architectural feature, but the presence of that completely blocks light to the first, second, third, and fourth floors of the building. So the site has a whole series, and the buildings have a whole series of these interesting contradictions. A lot of potential, but some interesting differences. Let's just flip to the next one, Shannon. We'll just keep running. The site overgrown with invasive species because of the heavy earth moving activities that occurred on it in the past. The potential is that, particularly the right two pictures, if you can clear some of this out, if you can do some interesting things with the land, you can develop some very important views of the river. It's a lovely section of the river. I think everybody's aware that the Red Oak Hill open space is on the other side of the river at this point. Also, the town boathouse is slightly downstream of us, and the Farmington Heritage Canal Trail bike path crosses on the big bridge right next to this site. Let's flip to the next. Yeah, this is out of the POCD. This is sort of one of the last general comments about the POCD and one of the intents of this plan. As that POCD was being developed, the town planning staff had been looking at putting together a connections and bike path kind of analysis for the town. There's an insert at the top that's map 6.3 at the POCD. We're the site right in the middle of that. And the key point that at that point Bill Warner was pounding into my head was that this is the crossing point of the main east-west road in the town, Farmington Avenue, and the trail. The trail is very, very busy. And there is no other connection nearby. The only other connection to the trail is up Brickyard Road, about 0.8 of a mile, the north end of the industrial section, and or south about 0.8 of a mile where Red Oak Hill Road crosses, and you have to go left on Red Oak Hill Road and then up, I think it is, New Britain Avenue to get to the parking area. So the desire of the town was to have this site become the intersection of the trail that could tie this together and eventually have a trail connect to center of town. We also all know that right on the other side of the trail from us at this point is Town Park, a number of baseball fields, the community recreation center. And the long-term goal of the town is to get a bike trail connection there. So the design has evolved out of all of this. And let's go on to the next one. In looking at trail connections, just things to keep in mind, the trail's about 30 feet above the site. We've looked at over time a number of different ways trails have been connected. For example, up in Collinsville, there's a ramp that was built to connect a street to the trail, about a 15-foot change of grade. And they did it at about 10% ramp, which is not handicap accessible. It's rather difficult. And in looking at the situation we have here on the site, we looked at that. We looked at other options, and we've decided to integrate into the design a connection that would allow the connections to be made at a 5% or less grade, which would be handicap accessible. And we're not going to build a bridge. We're not proposing to build a bridge like this. We're not going to build an abutment. We are going to actually probably lower the existing trail by about 15 feet, starting at the bridge over the Farmington River, as well as the bridge over Farmington Avenue. We'll put a sag in it, drop it down so the town could extend a trail into the town park, and so that we can extend the trail into our site and make it seamless. So that's been one of the major drivers on the site end. How do we accomplish this and do it in some way that it is at all affordable and that actually works? So let's flip on to the next one, Shannon. The master plan of the site, we're on the Farmington River, about 1,600 feet of frontage, I think, on the Farmington River. We've got wetlands along the river. We've got a floodplain right about where your cursor is now, Shannon, is the extent of the floodplain. And we also have the DEEP desiring presence to be kept back from the river because of the recent wild and scenic designation, and also because there may be endangered or threatened species somewhere within the river, mussels and or other fish. So the site comes with some constraints. The master plan has been to take the core of the site and to try to develop the multifamily residential, to push out to the river, toward the river, the bike trail, so that it follows the location as it is indicated on the plan of development. And then to take a couple of the parcels that we have that are out on Farmington Avenue and look to the future and say that those might be commercial sites. They have the potential because they are along the river, and they would obviously be tied in to us internally. And then to do a mixed use rehab on the existing buildings, tying that in to our development. I would also say that POCD and the standards of the town also require sidewalks to be built along the streets. So we'll be building about 1,200 feet of sidewalk along Farmington Avenue. We also have committed to providing public access to the water. That'll be handled via easement, and also views. POCD was looking for views to be developed for people along that bike path. Let's flip to the next one. The layout of the buildings flowed from that. We've got the master, you've all read, I'm sure, the MDD zone. It's a floating zone, and if it were applied here, we are seeking this master plan approval. Would give us time then to sit back and refine the plans, and then come back for the final site plan approval. But the layout at the moment suggests that we will have multifamily buildings, 3 stories tall. The zoning reg limits the buildings to 3 stories tall. There is an inducement in the zone. The zone has allowed the property to have 8 units per acre gross for multifamily units. And in effect, I think that was offered so that someone could afford to pay for 3,000 feet or so of trail to be built and the connections to be made for the public benefit there and for the access to the water. And this plan, if you've looked at it in some detail, what we've done is we've highlighted what might be happening in the various buildings. And for example, in the tin building that's out front, there might be some interest expressed that might become a brew pub restaurant. The main McCallum building at this point, probably retail or personal service on the first floor, and the upper floors at this point is a little bit up in the air with only an 8-foot floor to floor, or excuse me, 8-foot exposed, maybe 10-foot floor to floor on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor. That at the moment might end up being some self-storage or storage. Currently, the school system has, I think, 2 floors used for storage in that area. If there's a way the architects can include housing there and housing also in the tower form of that building, we've attributed 8 multifamily units to that building. The other buildings that we might have are sort of up in the air at this point. They could be restaurants, they could be personal service, they could be retail, could be a bank. And we'll just have to see how the tenant demand drives that. We would be providing a clubhouse. Clubhouse would be in the core of the site that all the multifamily would have access to. We would have driveway access interconnecting everything. And but the goal here in terms of, I think, the housing siting and the design of the buildings, it's something like 3/4 of the units face the river. And people will have some view of the river. We wanted to have the parking lots behind, there's garages underneath the buildings. All of that is behind, and when someone looks out, as much as possible buffer the driveway that goes to the clubhouse. The views are to open space and the river, and all the buildings are set back over 100 feet from the river. And I think on this plan, you can also see that these pink lines in there, those are the sewer areas. The sewer lines sort of break up the site into discrete sections, and with the out parcels, it's an interesting chore to try to fit everything in and maintain flood elevations and separations from wetlands and the like. Let's just flip through the next slide or two. In doing all of that, one of the commitments in the MDD zone is that we can have no direct stormwater discharge to the river. So Malone and McBroom, who are our engineers, have gone to some great lengths, done soil testing all over the property, and they've identified with us all of the areas where we will be doing either biofiltration and or underground infiltration of stormwater, so there will be no direct discharges to the river. So there's going to be a lot of money put underground to deal with all of the stormwater. Site is underneath the town level of 40% hard surface, which we're very pleased about. Let's flip to the next one, Shannon. Yeah, this is the preliminary planting plan down on the right-hand side here, lower to the river. A lot of invasive species right in there, Shannon. We're going to be taking out, we're going to be setting the bike trail in a little bit of a, I want to say like a valley, almost like a sunken road when you're walking along some of the old roadways. Then we'll be replanting that area with native trees because much of the vegetation in there is dead. Everything on the site will be replanted with native vegetation. If we have trees that have to come down near the road because Farmington Avenue, because of sidewalks and the like, we'll be replanting that. And down on the river, right, there's a peninsula that sticks out into the river. That is high and dry. It's not a wetland. It's a lovely area, has a wonderful view. And we're looking to make that a passive recreation spot where we might have some tables, chairs, and have that as a kayak and a canoe launch. That's going to be a lovely amenity, and it's a direct connection in up the hill above the floodplain to the clubhouse. And let's flip to the next, if you could.
Well, that's it for this slide. So then we're going to go to the next.
The next has the architecture in it.
Yes.
And at this point, I've talked enough. I'm just going to turn my computer around and let Todd the architecture.
My name is Todd Clark from Blue Moon Design, and I wanted to start off with the little hot dog building. It's actually a cute homage to a railroad station. I think it's a really nice design, and I also feel it's an important start to the the process. Because it's a hot dog stand, we'd like to incorporate more things that would be available to people maybe walking on the trail or walking near the river. So the hot dog stand will probably fit in very well. I wouldn't change a thing. It has great details, of which I would like to steal some of those and start spreading them around a little bit on different buildings in that little area where there's 3 existing buildings. Directly to the right of that in the foreground is the steel clad building. We would probably paint that. It's an existing 2-story building. If you go in the side lower level door, that's a 2-story space in there, and it has some beautiful exposed steel trusses, and it's a very nice open space. So as far as like a brewery where they need tall containers and all that stuff to make whatever they're making, it'd be a great space for that. Probably a venue, restaurant, anything like that. I'm sorry. And then facing the road, there's a mezzanine from the left of that lower side opening towards the front. There's a mezzanine in there, and I'm incorporating that level into creating some sort of outdoor seating. Maybe make a rail out of fabricated steel to mimic the trusses on the inside. Create some overhangs at the entryways that would kind of mimic the hot dog stand as far as brackets and things like that, but also keep industrial look as far as maybe gooseneck industrial lights over the sign and things along those lines. Unfortunately, the building, when you go inside, is a little dark because the windows are small. We have opportunities, obviously, of opening that up to get more light, but I thought maybe a new lantern on top of the building that might have some of the details that the hot dog would stand, the stand would have, that maybe we can start having a thread of commonality that goes through some of these buildings because they're so diverse. But yet, maybe we can have some common materials, details, or colors. So currently right now, that metal corrugated building is concrete on the foundation. I would like to skin that with new thin set stone that would match the living buildings, the apartment buildings, and I'll get to that in a little while, but start tying things together a little bit more, but let the buildings be different as they are. So if the next slide, please. So basically you can see the large industrial building right in the middle. We would have some repairs to the building more or less because some of the, I guess, parging is coming off. So we're going to clean all that up, put new windows in that mimic the windows that are there now. Basically on the first floor, it's a little small on a screen like this, but the first floor in the center of the building has a loading area that's at grade where it says retail business use. There's 3 bays there that are at grade. And what we're thinking for a concept, there might be like an ice cream shop or a sandwich shop or something like that, little boutique businesses that maybe in the summer we have overhead doors that open up and we put some seating outside, and so that people can kind of take advantage of that and mimic what the hot dog stand represents, is that people on the walking trail, people from the community can drive there, they can walk there, they can bike there. It could be part of the experience of walking along the river trail. And so I was thinking if we can tie that in, I think there'd be a nice use for the first floor. And as Phil has said, the second, third, and fourth floor only have 8-foot high ceilings. So there's not a lot that we're going to be able to do with those spaces. And the thing is built really well. So poking holes in the floor, or, creating 2-story spaces would not be an easy task. So the upper floors, the 5th and 6th floor, have great views of the river. It kind of looks out over, because it's tall enough to see over the buildings that are in front of it. This might be an awesome space for some apartments. We have some issues, obviously, in the middle of this building. We have an old elevator that's probably the size of a small VW Bug or something. So we have height issues that we have to work with, and we might consider on the back side where the trestle is incorporating an addition to the building that might solve all the height problems that you're going to have in the building itself. So with the industrial building, we're planning on fixing up the outside and painting it a nice color, all warm tones. Basically, there'd probably be some accent colors. There's a brick infill section in between the concrete. I would like to see that exposed and see what kind of shape the brick is in. And if the brick's good, then I'd probably like to show it, because that was probably the original thing. If it's not in good shape, either paint with an accent color and or maybe some tiling of some sort. So in this view, over to the left is really a CMU building. There's really nothing glorious about it. It doesn't speak well architecturally. So I was thinking that we could probably play with this a little bit more, would say the stone river rock base, and then add some bracketing and some siding, board and batten siding that matches the hot dog stand, and start incorporating some continuity that's going through sort of the whole project. And again, there's some metal awnings on there that would mimic what we would be doing on the metal building, and just trying to bring some continuity to all the buildings. You're obviously not going to be able to change the industrial building too much, but we're thinking about, again, the gooseneck things for lighting and things that aren't really broadcasting out, but really shine on the building, and probably some possible uplighting up on the upper stories above the 4th floor. So the next slide. So this building is sort of designed for one of the 2 pad sites. And if we had multiple tenants, again, I would bring in a lot of the details, colors, and textures that would be on the other buildings. But if it tended to be a single tenant, like a bank or something, I'm sure they would want their own brand on the building itself. So I really wasn't, I don't have a good handle on that until it moves forward. A specific tenant would probably have its own architecture to it. So this was just sort of to show you, if we have a multiple tenant building, that we'd probably apply many of the same techniques to this building as we did in the earlier ones that are existing. Next, please. This is the back of the clubhouse, and the clubhouse for the residential area is actually an important building. It's sort of the center of the whole project. People will meet there, and it's situated on the site to have a great view of the river. So basically, this is the backside that faces the river. So we're opening this up as much as possible. There's a infinity pool that's just in front of the back part here, and lots of like patio area that we're planning on. Also bringing in, much of the stuff that we were talking about earlier with other buildings. We'd have some field river stone columns. We'd add some cedar barge boards, probably some board and batten in some places, and adding nice lighting, down lighting in these spaces, probably ceiling fans out on the porch so that people can relax. The use, there's going to be a 2-story main hall as you walk in. You can see that from the back, the 2-story gable, right? And off to the right would be like a quiet room where they'd have access to a fireplace and maybe a pool table or something along those lines. Over on the far end would be a gym, and that would be a 2-story space with a mezzanine that would have a quiet yoga place that would look out over the river on the upper floor, exactly where that hand was. And then per Abe's request, we would have a golf simulator somehow in here. So we're planning on doing that also. There's a pet wash that we're planning, a jacuzzi area. So it's really meant to bring in all that residential people to this place to sort of mingle and be a part of the river experience. So that's what we're doing there. Let's see the next slide, please. So this is the back of a typical building. Again, we're trying, I've always felt that you can make a building look a little shorter if you bring in horizontal banding, and that's what we're doing here. On no piece of the elevation are you going to have 3 stories of siding. So we brought in the barge boards again. We're going to have some river stone cladding. The lower levels will probably be a slightly darker siding, and then the upper ones will be a little bit lighter. And then maybe up where the barge boards are, we'll have a board and batten type siding that kind of makes it a little more friendly to, say, a river use than, say, an urban look. The tones of the colors will be earthy tones. Like I said, the river rock will be a light brown to orange-y kind of looking thing. And this would be their view looking out towards the river. And again, Phil already described that over 75% of the units will have some sort of river view, which was really important to us. Next, please. It's just your typical plan for this particular building. There's 3 building types, maybe a couple more if we're adding in elevators or not, but basically the first floor towards Route 4 would have garages on that side on the first floor. Opposite the hallway, there'll be units, and then up on the 2nd and 3rd floor would all be residential units. The only units that sometimes don't have a view on the 2nd and 3rd floor plan would be the upper 2 units that face the driveway. But there is one building that would probably have a sliver of a view. That's why we've added decks and patios out there so that everyone can go out on the patio, even on the back side, and be able to see the river side of the view. Next, please. This is a typical elevation. We work really hard to move the building in and out, and also change the plate heights. So the middle is a little taller and the sides step down slightly. And again, that was to break up the mass of this. The middle elevation is the garage side. We're going to have basically a roof over the whole side that would protect all the garage doors from weather and stuff like that and people pulling in. We'd have 2 main entryways that would be river stone piers with directly above that would be cedar truss work that would make the entryway. And then from there up, we would have a mix of sidings, clapboard or shingle or board and batten. And again, all earth tones to sort of blend in with the natural river setting. Next, there is one. That's it. Okay. The views. Okay, so this slide here is obviously the top one as before. This is the way it looks now, and you can see way over on the left, that's the industrial building sticking up over there. You can see that as they're clearing some of the land for the buildings and the river walk and all those sort of things, those upper floors should have a nice view of the river. The lower slide is basically taking a 3D model and putting it on the site as it would sit on the site, and how the buildings sit on the site and how they relate to the river. So obviously the river walk is going to be right along the river, but the buildings are over 100 feet away from this. So it'll be a nice setting for people walking through without necessarily feeling like you're looking in private residences, because it'll be a great expanse of land in between that. So those views are both taken from the walk up above as it goes over the river. So it's an elevated view, obviously. Next, please. Okay.
Summer view.
Yeah, this is the summer view. And as you can see from, you can barely see the buildings at this point. Yeah, you over on the left where you can barely see the industrial building. I'm sure the view at that point is a little more obscure, but as the buildings get closer to the river, some of this will open up a little bit. There'll be vistas obviously created of the river, because that's what this is all about. I mean, it's really about this walking path and how it relates to our site. It's the walking path along the river that's extremely important, but also at the same time, bringing in the community so that the public can actually access the river, which is, you know, pretty rare. There's not too many places where you can actually get really close to the river at that point. So this will be, how was it, like 1,300 feet or something, of 1,600 feet of river frontage. So this is an opportunity for the community and also the people living there to have a nice river experience. And people will have kayaks from the residential area. They'll have kayaks potentially and going right into the water off of the point and everything, because it's very calm in this section of the river. So there'll be a lot of activity, hopefully, and hopefully it's something that can be like a little village, not only to the people living there, but to the community in general, and a place that they might want to stay for an hour or two, you know, by the river. So that was our concept. Is there anything else? Okay. Yeah, so this is a
view from the boathouse.
right. These are views from the boathouse. Obviously before there's nothing there. The after one, you can see the relationship of the buildings as they face the river across the way. And so we worked really hard to keep the scale of the buildings. We're allowed 3 stories, but we did everything we could massing wise to bring it down as much as possible. So we're varying plate heights from, say, 5.5 feet up to 11 feet in some areas for when the gables rise up a little bit. But I'm using the higher gables on the end to hide the lower slope pitch that is basically the main building. So we're doing what we can to keep the scale down, at the same time maintain the views of the river wherever possible for all these buildings. Yeah, this is summer. Yeah, so it's awfully green. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. That's another one, or is?
Oh, that's it. That's it. That's the last slide.
Thank you.
Shannon, I think we're just about done. I think everybody's probably tired of hearing from us at the moment. My understanding from the developers is that the housing they're looking to build is upper end, but for young professionals and empty nesters who like to stay in town. And they're all 1 and 2 bedroom units. And we're hoping that people will find favor with this application, and we'd like to hear the comments in relation to this master plan so that we can move forward to TPZ and eventually developing this for a site plan.
Okay.
That's about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll turn it over. Tim, do you want to take the lead, or you want me to run through everybody? I can do either way. We can get
But
comments.
Shannon, I think what would be useful for us is understanding what we're commenting on tonight in terms of the master plan. Because I think are we commenting on the architecture? Are we commenting on the master plan layout, thought process of what we're seeing? Or because you had said there's kind of 2 steps to this whole thing.
So there are 2 steps. So this is, again, at this point, it's the zone change, master plan, and special use. So it's an opportunity for an initial look for this committee. at this application. And I think any comment that, you know, that's normally under your purview. So certainly the architecture, the positioning and general layout, how the interaction between the walking trail and the buildings, the landscaping that's being proposed. Again, this is an initial comment. In general, you know, you like it, you don't like it, that type of thing. Any specific comments that they can take away with them and think about, and then have in consideration when they, assuming they're successful with the zone change and master plan approval, that they have something from you that they could use for finalizing this when they come back for site plan.
Okay. So I would think we kind of go around the table. I don't know if anybody wants to jump in first, or you want me to call out names, or it's hard to look around the table.
It is, that's why we've been doing it alphabetically, and that seems to work well. We can certainly go through twice then, and if it gives somebody a second opportunity if they want to.
Sure.
Okay, which would put Miles Brown first, if Miles has any comments he'd like to share.
Sure. Yeah, happy to go first. Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, first of all, I'm excited to see somebody developing the property, and slightly jealous because every time I ride my bike back here, I think, boy, I wish I could get a chance to do something with that mill there. It's a very cool building, and I think it sets the site up for something pretty interesting. And I'm happy that the connection is being made to the bike path. I think that's terrific. Going along the river. I was, minor detail. I'll keep most of my comments going to be sort of very on the big picture side, but if they ever looked at connecting to the bridge that actually connects over to the bike path, if that was considered, maybe it's a costly piece, but it looks sort of like almost a former aqueduct or something like that. Again, that's kind of a minor detail, but something I'd like to hear about. As far as the kind of big picture on the site layout, I guess I'm a little less excited about the way it's been developed. I guess I understand a little bit better seeing some of the challenges with the sewer lines running through there and some things, but to sort of have the plan and the formation of buildings be formed around the path of a sewer line doesn't exactly set itself up for a nice, strong building organization plan that forms a sense of community. I think that the site plan feels a little bit too sprawling, and I think there could be a better arrangement to the buildings that forms a stronger sense of community. I kind of was playing around with it, and that gets dangerous, but I think you could condense your plan almost to 2/3 of the site versus where you've really spread all the buildings all the way along. And I get the river views, but there are other ways to get river views. I don't know if the planners considered arranging the buildings like fingers perpendicular to the river, where actually I think you can get more. You can actually have almost 100% of your units have views or close to it. I feel like there's too much pavement in general, and I know master plan. So again, with keeping my comments kind of big picture, I think I read that there's 450 parking spaces for 190 units, which equates to about almost 2.4 parking spaces per unit, which is a lot for a development like this. And I'm not sure you need that many parking spaces. And you're right at the impervious, 0.38, which I think your limit is 0.4. And I read in the plans that if you add the bike path and the public sidewalks, you're actually over 40%, which obviously we want the bike paths and we want the public sidewalks. So, if there's some way to, I think, condense a plan a little bit and get more, like I said, more of a sense of community developed with the arrangement of the buildings, if the sewer line is making it too cost prohibitive, I don't know. As far as the architecture goes, you know, I love the hot dog stand. I think it's a great little building. I don't think it should be the inspiration for the rest of the architecture you're doing. I personally think it should stand on its own. I feel like you've got something more interesting to play off the mill architecture in the existing Winchell Smith mill, especially with all the windows and the glazing. I just think that the architecture itself also is, you know, as it gets into the residential buildings, I think there's an opportunity to do something more interesting. It looks like a lot of developments that are trying to be contextual and trying to look sort of, you know, historic New England. And I don't think you have to do that here. I think you can create something a little bit more unique and more interesting with the architecture. So again, I'm not going to comment on the details and the way you've broken down the massing and things like that. I think it's more of from my opinion, it's more of a concept that I think is missing from that standpoint. It's too bad that the mill only has 8 foot. Is it actually 8 foot clear, the structure inside? Just sure, it looks like the floor to floor is a lot taller than that. But
They're really, I've been in the building, Miles.
Yeah.
They're incredibly deep floors,
Yeah.
concrete floors and concrete columns that are
yeah,
on center. So you can see the
Yeah,
window
it's
spacing and there's
challenging.
almost like another column in here.
yep.
So
Well,
it's dense with
it is.
concrete
Yeah, I
columns.
guess it is. It is what it is. I'm not sure the one-story building to the east of the mill is something that you want to necessarily try to keep. You may find it's too costly to try to keep that, and I'm not sure it's doing a whole lot for you. But that's, you know, again, sort of an opinion thing. To dress that up might not be worth it. You might just want to strip that off and let the side of that building be exposed, be more useful. But that's the extent of my comments. I think it's an exciting development, like I said, but I'm glad we're at the master plan level because I think it does need some work.
Okay. Dean Burho would be next.
Yeah, I would concur a lot with what Miles has said. And I'm not thrilled with the location of the buildings. It just seems like you plunked a bunch of squares in there with in the most convenient spots without a lot of thought to it, in my opinion. The landscaping to me, is, you know, obviously that's, you know, where my heart is, but the landscaping seems pretty blasé. It's just you know, limited to right around the buildings. There's not a lot of, I'd love to see some landscaped areas, some, you know, areas that, you know, draw people away from the buildings, you know, a little bit more, just a little more thought into that. The other thing that concerns me, you know, as well, and, you know, this is a prime access area to the river. And I'm not feeling like the general public is going to get much out of this. You have one little picnic area down there that on one of the plans I noticed is listed as a restricted private access only. Besides the bike path, I don't see picnic tables, sitting areas, anything where the general public coming through here will get any use out of their access to the river. It'd be great for the residents here, possibly, where they can get a river view. But the rest of us in town, I mean, this is prime river access here. I'd love to see something more incorporated into this to allow the rest of the town, besides the residents here, to have a little bit more use or access to the river than what I'm seeing here. In general, my thoughts.
Okay. Next is Sheldon Crosby.
So I really appreciate the effort that the entire planning team has put into this property. And to echo Miles, I'm excited that we are putting it into play, or at least we're trying to. And I think the conceptual uses make a lot of sense. I like the mix of housing and recreation and commercial development. I think it's a good location for it. I hope that the commercial development is controlled architecturally so that it doesn't look like yet another strip mall, which I don't think will happen, but it certainly could, particularly if you have some tenants who want their own architecture, and we have a Drive-It Palace. Regarding the architecture and the site planning, I appreciate Dean and Miles' comments. They really echo my own thoughts. I would add one more, and that is when I look at the residential buildings in concert with the commercial buildings, and including the old Winchell Smith building, there's no sense of place. And I think all of us are looking at this property as an opportunity to develop a sense of place. We have the big bridge and the high bike path on the west. And then we have the other property that's been developed on the east with the river to the south and Farmington Avenue on the north. And it's a terrific location. I think the buildings, as Dean may have said, are placed, yes, for a view, but not great necessarily. I would love to see more of a campus organization to the entire site that allows both the residents and the visitors, such as myself on the bike path and Miles, we use it almost daily, to feel that we're a part of it, and that access to the river, I think, is really important for Farmington residents. You could probably slide it along the bike path. If you're dropping that bike path down to grade for the disabled, you may be able to widen it, take it up to Farmington Avenue and back down to the river. So it's almost a right of way, 20, 30 feet wide along the old bike path. And that would allow people free in and out and get up to Farmington Avenue off to the high school or back down to the Mead. The hot dog stand I've always regarded as cute. To me, it's always been a bit of a cartoon. Yeah, it's a hot dog stand. Let's not put a 15-acre development based on a hot dog stand. I think the old concrete building, the near modernity of that structure really begs you to take off from that and be a little less homey throughout the design of the buildings. I realize we're still at the concept level, but along with Miles, I would really have thought that you could have used that as a point of departure rather than the hot dog stand. And I would encourage you to go in that direction. I realize that the concrete building is a big problematic, particularly with the low ceilings, but it has a lot of strength to it visually. And I think you could really pick that through your development. But if you can do that and establish a sense of place, I think you have a fantastic development. And that's the direction I would urge you to pursue as you move through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheldon. Tim will hit you last as chair, so Jack Kemper would be up next.
Hi. I'm very honored that we love the hot dog stand so much, by the way. Carol's Lunchbox is great, but I would agree with everyone else that that I would take off from the buildings that are there, the big buildings. I think the steel building could have like a monitor or some other way to bring light in and work with the architecture of the Winchell Smith building. And I just think that would be a better way to go. And I would think that the apartment buildings maybe don't need to be so broken up. They are their own context. So just think about that. It looks like in the commercial buildings, we'll see what they turn out to be. I guess we can't really comment on those because we don't know what they're going to be. But generally, I mean, the idea of this mix, as everyone has said, is very nice. So I think that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Jack. Tim LaBouthier.
Thanks. I would agree with Miles, his first comment about the connection of the building with the bike trail. I know I've always been so intrigued by kind of the history of that building, but not knowing much about it. But I could just kind of envision the trains backing in there and utilizing the building. I think the reason I'm here is that I kind of have a sense of history, and that's what intrigues me most. So where I lack in architectural professionalism and landscape design, my hope is that I would encourage you to kind of do a little research about the history of the building and kind of see if those types of the elements of its history might be able to be something that could be celebrated. So again, a challenging design, I realize, but there is I know the idea of obviously we can't keep the grain silo in there, but it's just fascinating. If anything, I would hope that you would incorporate kind of celebrate the history of the building with some historical markers or whatever. I think that the entire space, the entire plan, I just would encourage you to think about the people that would want to live there and what would they want? Would they want to live in a place that looks like a glorified Centennial Inn? Or would they really, why are they really going to be living here? They're going to be living here because they want to be near the river. They want to celebrate the river. That's going to be the selling point that all the salespeople are going to be telling people. So, my thought is, in looking at what you've proposed along the river, obviously celebrating the trail, but I would hope that you would kind of celebrate the wildlife of the trail and the uniqueness of the river. It is a wild, scenic river. So certainly, I'd hate to see a lot of grassy knolls and modern looking park benches, or maybe something that celebrates more the fact that they're living next to this amazing resource that we have, and not making it look like you're sitting outside a Marriott. So I think that's just kind of two of my thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you. Dave Quisenberry.
Okay. I think all our minds are sort of latched onto very similar things. A couple things that, and again, at this point, I forget who made the comments, but I do wonder a bit about the effort put into trying to save the CMU building along the side of the Winchell Smith building. It might, even if you could potentially build something else there from scratch, it might be an easier exercise. Relative to the overall concept, I must say, I'm actually very excited about. I think the concept of this development being there, location-wise, and what's being proposed are all things that I'm very excited about, especially the brewery. Hopefully that would actually come to pass. I'd be very excited about that. Relative to the bike path, obviously main feature of the site, I hope that there'd be a way, maybe as part of this development, I don't know, it's always sensitive on land that you don't own, but whether it could be connected to the east along Farmington Avenue to the wide sidewalk that was just built in front of all the CA Senior Living. I believe there's only Peter Fishman's parcel between this and Bridgewater Street. So, and I'm pretty sure he would be amenable to having the sidewalk go across his property as well and allow people from the village and Devonwood to be able to ride out and get on this path and then connect through. So that would be something I think would be nice. As far as the layout of the buildings, it's interesting, that community building is, obviously very nice and a lot of amenities, which would be very nice for the residents. But, and I think this goes back all the way to Miles's comment, is that there's no sense of community. You've got this community building, which won't be an inexpensive building to build, but the way everything is sited, it's not necessarily a place. There's no village green, there's no gathering place. there's no arrangement of the buildings that, wants, has me want to spend time outside. You can kind of imagine these buildings where everybody, just is constrained to their little, 6x9 balcony, and you have this beautiful natural site. And I just don't really see any outdoor recreation or not just recreation, but simply gathering areas where people that would live here, or as was mentioned before, people from the public would enjoy. So I would ask you to consider trying to create a little bit more community layout where maybe buildings arranged around Village Green or something of that sort. Along with the concerns about how the buildings are arranged, one of the problems we always run into in master plans, because we really haven't designed the buildings at this point, is we tend to come up with a footprint and then we copy it, 10,000 times across our site. And I think this site, especially given the various constraints of the river, the bike path, the road, the sewers, potentially begs for some different building scales. Even if there's continuity in the way they end up looking, there should be some bigger buildings and some smaller buildings. There shouldn't be a single apartment building design that's just repeated. I would think there certainly would be an opportunity for more variety. And then the only other comment too was about the parking. I look at the layout of the parking, and you mentioned that essentially the north sides of each building is garages. Yet when I look at the layout, it appears that there are parking spaces. So I'm gathering that what you're doing is you're allowing maybe for one car to be inside and one car to be outside. But it just seems like not only does there seem to be a lot of parking, but then when you count the parking inside the buildings, it does seem kind of excessive in the amount of parking. But I'm sure as you design this, you'll figure out what really is needed. So I guess that sort of summarizes my main feeling is, as far as the architecture, I understand the attraction of taking off from the factory building. I just know, again, being an architect that does do a lot of multifamily, I know that when we try things like that, we often get a lot of pushback from, that's not necessarily what people want. Certainly worth an exploration, but my personal feeling is I don't feel like there has to be a glaring similarity between the commercial buildings and the residential buildings. They are different in their very nature, but I do think there needs to be more variety in scale and context and arrangement in the layout of the residential zone of this site. So overall, though, I'm just very excited about it, and think it's a huge amount of possibilities. So I'm very happy that this is potentially happening.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Next up is Bob Sanford.
I guess one of the advantages of being at the end of the alphabet is a lot of the comments have already been made, but I'll just say that overall, I really, really like the plan and the master plan and the concept. I think it's a great use of the parcel that's, I've seen my entire life, and it's always been kind of an eyesore, even in the heyday of McCallum's, and when they were taking rail cars in there and they were storing mufflers in the upper floors. I like the mixed use. I like the river views. I like the bike path. Really like the concept of the bike path being accessible to the development and also to the town ball fields. When I first heard that nice little bridge from the rail trail to the building was going to go away, I was disappointed. But then with the advantage of having it accessible to the ball fields and to everyone in the development at ground level, that's great. I'm not really keen on the potential of storage space in the main building and the second, third, and fourth floors. Be great if that could be art space or if it could be housing. I realize you have challenges there and it may not be feasible, but I'd encourage you to try to make it something higher use than storage. I agree with the comments Dean made and others did about it would be nice to have some access for town folks. You know, it was noted there's a lot of parking. Maybe a small section of parking could be carved out for public parking and allow use of the bike trail to start there. Picnic tables along the river or the path for townsfolk would be nice too. I like that idea. Maybe a canoe or a kayak launch for the public. I agree with the comments about a sense of place would be nice in a village type green somewhere. I do like the look of the residential buildings. I do think the way that they're designed, or the concept anyway, using earth tones and using the different heights and the different elevations makes it much more attractive than if you just had a massive, long, tall 3-story wall. I do agree with Dave's comments about different sized buildings, and that may help you, create that sense of village. And so those are really my comments. But again, I just want to reiterate that I think the concept and the overarching idea and plan is absolutely terrific. Fully support it.
Great, thank you. Peter Van Beckham next.
Yeah, Bob, you thought you were at the end of the alphabet.
I'll go in reverse next time, Peter.
One of the advantages of being near the end is everything is better said by others before me. I too, in general, am very positive about the idea of mixed use development. My emphasis would be on the campus idea or some sense of community buildings relating to each other. I put a real emphasis there. I would also put a real emphasis on public access. I think the architecture is fine. I think I agree that buildings could be different from each other. I think there's something a little soul-sucking about these big developments where everything looks the same. I like how the buildings are made to look, have variety and not look so massive. But those are my general concepts, my general ideas. I would like to mirror what's been said before me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Eagles.
So I would reiterate that I think the mixed use idea is awesome. I think it really fits in with where the town wants to go and what we want to do with this site. I'm really amazed at how much dirt got taken out over the years and how big that, when Phil showed that, the big dent in the south side, the east end of the site, it just amazed me. I'd never really paid that much attention to that. And figure out it's got to be a great swimming hole down there. But what I'd like to do is just read a section out of the what the MDD zone and what they say about mixed use, which I think kind of ties a lot of what everybody's saying together and why we're having a little bit of adverse reaction to this whole thing, is because the mixed use is defined as creative and proactive planning shall integrate complementary mixed uses and create a sense of place where people can live, work, shop, and play, thereby reducing dependency on the automobile. So when I read that and I look at the site plan, I see not a lot that tells me we're not relying on the automobile. I don't see a great sense of place. I wholeheartedly agree with Dave in his thought process of instead of having one building that we're repeating in the residential area that's the same all the way around, that the way to make things fit better would be to have different sized buildings that you could sculpt into a neighborhood. It just, when I first saw it, it kind of felt to me that we have an apartment complex on the right that, you know, could be in Cromwell on the Silas Dean or somewhere else. And then we have, you know, the mill area that's more commercial, that could have a real cool, funky little vibe. And it's like, how do you meld the two of those two together that kind of makes this create, you know, this sense of community and sense of place? So I agree that the inspiration of the hot dog stand, while we love it and the hot dogs are really good there, shouldn't necessarily be the inspiration for a lot of the architecture around it. That, you know, we could have individualism with building, whether it's the inspiration of the, you know, the mill. But to me, the biggest piece is really, at this point, as part of the master plan, is really the sense of place, and sense of community, and how do we create that so that the mill building and that whole piece works through and really connects all the way to the other end, to the branch bank in the upper right corner. You know, because I just see another not so good looking building, you know, like the Ion Bank going up across the street from my house, you know, down on the other end of the site. And it's like, how do you tie all that together as a community instead of having disparate things along the road and along the path? I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Phil or Todd, do you want to respond to any of that or have any additional comments or thoughts?
I guess just a couple of quick things. I think it was, might have been Miles that asked a question about connecting to the bridge. I was wondering if Miles could explain that question.
Sure. Trying to think if you have a picture of the back side of the mill.
Yep. Yeah, I do. I just gotta.
We're wrapping it up.
Yeah.
Here. So there's the
Yeah,
trestle. There's the spur.
that little trestle bridge. Yeah. That actually comes right over to the bike path at the same elevation. You know, whether it could be a walkway from the mill building over to the bike path, or somehow be a point where you could break off. And I mean, maybe it doesn't have to come down to grade, but just some way to connect to the bike path from the building could be really interesting. It's already there. It needs a slab and some railings, I think, to connect itself to the building, and leave that structure back there if possible. I don't know if that's blocking views, or I understand that the metal building on the top is blocking some views, but maybe that could be a giant deck or something off the back of the building. But
well, you know,
that's what I was.
An interesting observation. We haven't made any decisions about that. There's nothing final in any of our minds about it. Because we've talked about it. What is it? Should it be connected? Is it a potential hazard? What should we do with it? And I know we've talked internally about that structure on the back. When you're standing there, on the inside, you're actually looking down through the ties, the way they used to. They open up the hoppers and let the grain fall through. And you realize if you lean too far forward, you know, you could fall and kill yourself. So, so it's a little unnerving. But that building in the back, even though it does block all of the windows, there are no windows on the back of this building, so it's hard to say how could we insert, like we would have liked to have inserted residential on some of those floors. But this building blocks it. that structure blocks it, but that structure has amazing potential. When you're in there, you're sitting there saying, my God, this could be a wonderful restaurant. I mean, you could open this thing up. You could do a great facility. So we're really not sure at this point. We haven't come to any conclusions about how we should handle it. It's all potential. And so, yeah, we're sort of in the same boat that you are. How should that be approached? And we're still thinking about it. I think that's why we're at the master plan level, because we're not ready at this point. We want to have some type of approval that we can say, yeah, we've got an approval that allows us to move forward here, and we're not completely swimming in air. But we're just not at the point of nailing down a specific plan. That's the situation, because there's a lot of opportunities, and we've got to sort through them to get to an answer.
Phil, a nice walk on the High Line in New York might be inspirational for you. I don't know when that will be safe to do. I'm not sure, but I know many of us have been on there. It's the way that the rail lines are incorporated into the buildings, how they've been modernized, how they've been utilized is really inspiring. If you have an opportunity to do that, or even check it out online, it may offer you some really inspiring ways to incorporate that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yep.
Am I live here? One of my pet concepts is one of the things that makes old towns successful is that buildings were owned and developed by different people. And when a single owner comes into a project like this, it's typically their vision, their ego, their financial resources, their goals, whatever, that are spread over the entire property. But if you could design in a way that looked like 4 or 5 or a dozen different owners of small sections of this parcel developed each of their properties in a way that satisfied their ideas and needs, it might be a window into diversifying this in a way that could be really nice. And these existing buildings show a bit of that. That's just an idea that when I notice a pleasing place, it's usually because there were a lot of different owners. And if somehow a single owner can incorporate that kind of thinking, I think it's to our advantage.
I understand what you're saying.
Can I interject real quick? When you started to address Miles's comment about the rail trestle, I guess when he was talking, that wasn't what I was thinking. I don't know, Shannon, can you go back to that the overall site plan, the nice,
Sure, I can. Yeah.
nice color rendered one?
This one?
Yeah. Yes. And what I thought he was referring to is if you look at where your hand is now, towards Farmington Avenue, parallel to the thing, I thought what Miles was referring to was having a way that you could come in there. Because, I mean, obviously, right now, because this path doesn't exist, when I go from my house to the bike path, I go down Route 4 and then I get off my bike and I climb up the hill by the crossing there. And there's, really steep, but I'm able to get up there. And then I get on the bike path and I go. And obviously now I'll be able to come in where your hand is now.
Right.
But at the same point, there are people that live in the Highlands and over near the high school and all those places that if they had the ability to come in where she's got her hand now, that would allow this to be a complete loop through the property. And I think somebody mentioned even the idea of having, parking there by the brewery so that you could actually come in there and park. And then you could start, you could then get your bike off your car and hit the path from there. So I would suggest trying to make sure that the bike path came from Farmington Avenue, went all the way around and ended back at Farmington Avenue, just from a connection point of view.
Dave, I think everybody is in agreement that ultimately, and that, I think that one of the fact that people climb up the bank, because I've done it on occasion as well, very, very steep. And down on the river end where you can climb up, there's actually like a cable that's attached to keep you from breaking your neck when you climb up and down. But Shannon, there's a plan in here, go back a couple, that shows the connection to the park. Keep going back, keep going back.
This one.
Yeah, right here. The part of the town master plan is that on the high school side, it's, what's the name of the street?
Wanamasa.
Wanamasa. There's parking there that services the ball fields, and there's paths that come out of that. Shannon, do you see the tree rendering there? There's a path that goes between the trees. An existing path? No, it's white. It comes off the parking lot, diagonals down.
Oh, this path. Yes, I'm familiar with this one. Yeah.
That's a method that people use now to get to the river and actually up to the bike path right where you are. But the town plan of development calls for a bike path to be dropped down to the parking lot. So the next step after the path is made on the development side would be for the town, once we lower the trail, so that the grades can be acceptable, for the town to build the connection to the west, so the people coming from the west can get immediately up on the trail and have parking. So it's incorporated into the bigger picture.
Yeah, I see that now. When you went through this diagram in the beginning, I guess I wasn't grasping what this was because the orientation was spun. So I wasn't clued in on that connecting over to the ball fields, but I see what
it's all in the package, and you know, I apologize for going past it, but when you're making these presentations on such a big master plan covering so many things, it's hard to figure out until people, you know, like you're asking me questions. It's hard to figure out what people want to talk about. So yeah, we've already sort of baked this into the cake.
All right. Bill, anything else that you'd like to add or clarify at this point?
Well, no, I think the comments are all very interesting comments. I think we've all had similar thoughts at different times. And, you know, much of what happens on a site is driven by what the sponsor is looking for in terms of, in this case, residential marketable product. And I'm sure we're going to sit back and try to incorporate as many of the thoughts as possible. And, you know, and that's the whole point. The point was to come tonight, get everybody's feeling. I think we're all excited about it, and we want to get something in the end that is complementary to the town and to the site itself. And it's also something that the developers feel that they can market. And I think we have to be careful of the costs, because I know this bike path commitment, this is the price of doing business, is going to be an enormous cost. And everything is going to be sort of balanced against it. I would also say too that, and again, it's not something that we dwelled on at all in the presentation. The Shannon, right where the clubhouse is, there's a field to the left. That area right where your hand is. We'd be looking at creating, in effect, it's not surrounded by buildings, but we'd be looking at creating a commons in there that would have, you know, the recreation areas, barbecue pits, maybe a playground for kids, There'd be at least 3 areas along the river to the left of the building on the far left. Shannon, would be a gathering spot for people at that point, perhaps another one right where your hand is, and then another one off the pool area. A number of the members, the whole idea was to keep the recreation towards the river in part because of the wild and scenic, keeping the buildings back from the river. The frontage of the river coming from the railroad bridge towards the middle of the site, that whole section of the river in there, down to that intermediate point, let's call it, or peninsula, is used right now by people for fishing. So our anticipation had been to provide easements to the town to allow public access directly from the town parkland and or from the bike path to the river for fishing purposes. And we had not planned on a separate public kayak launch. It's not inconceivable that might not be possible because that was built into the MDD zone. When you take a look at, and I think it was the last person that spoke.
That's terrific.
Was that Tim?
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, because the public and private access to the river for
Nice job on the broccoli.
is built into the regulation. So that's something we'll take under advisement and we'll consider.
Okay.
I don't think anything that was said tonight was so ordinary that we won't take it under advisement and give some serious thought.
Okay. Any of the committee members have any final comments, parting thoughts?
I just want to reiterate what several folks have said and what Tim mentioned there at the end, but the whole idea of this zone is to create a sense of community, a sense of continuity between the commercial and the residential, and I don't see that here at all in this plan right now. If I were buying a unit here and I wanted to walk over to the restaurant that's over there, or to the brewery, or the sandwich shop that may go in, or whatever, there's no easy access to get from these residential residential buildings to the commercial area. There's no central walkway with a greenway, or there's just, if I wanted to take Fido out for a walk, I got to walk down through asphalt parking lots because there's no real walkway or greenways. It's just, there's no sense of community here at all. And I really think that needs to be rethought. If I were buying in this unit, I would be buying for 2 reasons. One, access to the river, but one, I want to be able to enjoy the amenities that are in the commercial part of it right near me. And I don't get that sense of that from this design at all. And I just want to encourage you to rethink the landscaping. I know that's my passion, but rethink the landscaping perspective of it, because it's pretty blasé and it gives no sense of community. It's just there. It's like an afterthought.
Okay. Sheldon, I know you were indicating you wanted to add something.
Just briefly, I heard the comment about the bike path and the prospective cost of it. I would urge you to remember that the bike path is now a major part of Farmington, and it's used on a daily basis, if not hourly. It's really become a major part of the town's recreation. And yeah, you've got a great site on the river, and the cost of doing business is making sure the bike path and the river are a part of our lives as they continue to be.
Okay.
Shannon, I only had one last thing, which I forgot to mention before. And I 100% agree with the focus on the river, but I'm not that often on the river, but I'm on Route 4 every day. And to have to look at the I think attention needs to be paid ultimately on what this whole thing feels like from Route 4 as much as it does to focus on the river. You know, you basically have two fronts to this whole thing, and to face all the parking, all the garages, all the rest of that stuff, you know, to Route 4 and say we're going to put all the pretty stuff on the riverside, I think that's got to be paid attention to as well.
Yeah, this is Miles. I would echo that comment. It's kind of like you're really turning your back on Route 4, the way the buildings are arranged and everything. I think, you know, you need to really take a look at that.
I agree with that as well, Tim and Miles. Route 4 is an important part of that trip down to Unionville.
I agree as
Other
well.
than that, we look forward to working with you guys on a great project.
Okay. It sounds like we've done a full complement of comments. So I will, as usual, synthesize them and get them out for review so that they are ready for sharing with the TPZ prior to the meeting on December 7th. Tim, would you like a letter done like we did for the previous, so we can do a letter? I can synthesize everyone's comments and then do a letter. It sounds in general that everyone's excited about the project. And I think it's important that that gets shared with the commission and then highlight the few points of items that the ADRC would like the applicant to keep in consideration moving ahead.
That'd be great.
Okay. I will take a shot at it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Anything else from anyone this evening? And
Just thank you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
thank you. Thank you, Bill and Todd and Abe and Barbara and Robin, everyone for joining us this evening. Thanks for putting the presentation together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Night.